Welcome into PFF TV. I'm Cam Mellor. Today, joined by George Chahrouri, and we're
Close.
talking.
Close.
Is it?
You're getting
I'm
there.
not close.
Look, you're getting there. That's what's important. Continued upward progression is what we're looking for with teams and with you. You'll be
Teams
great, though.
And with me, we're gonna jump right in here. We've already talked 1 through 16. We had Eric Eager in earlier. Talking to you as well here. I wanted to hear your take, your opinion, We're looking forward with this expected points added. It's more of a team metric than it is. On the article that we have on PFF.com, it ranks all 32 teams on a per dropback basis. But I wanted your take on this as we look forward to more of an analytical approach towards the game of football.
Yeah, everyone wants to take a data point and project it forward. That's all people really care about. So it's important to understand the predictive power of things. This is a backwards-looking metric, right? How did a team do last season on a per dropback basis? So it's important to keep that in mind and also think about what this tells you looking forward. And there are a couple things that expected points lumps in that you want to be aware of. So our grading takes into account, what the process was, right? Did a quarterback make a bad throw? Regardless of whether it was picked off, we grade it the same way. But expected points looks at the result. So it's not quite as predictive. It doesn't end up being as predictive as, say, PFF grades or some of the metrics that we build off PFF grades, but it is a very good metric overall. It does a great job of contextualizing how teams do on a per-play basis in this article in the passing game. If you want to learn more, I'd go check out the article. The intro gives you a good, what is expected points thing.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say this is the best metric for projecting forward, but it is probably the best metric for looking back and saying, how did a team do? Because it does take into account the result. And that is something that obviously shows up in the wins and losses.
It does. It's big out there, obviously. Eric did a good job of explaining it too, kind of on a more broad scheme. So we'll jump back into the rankings now, though, on this. 1 through 16 has already been done. We got a little bit of flack for this, actually, because we're high on Baker Mayfield, obviously. We're high on the Cleveland Browns this year, expected to win the AFC North. They only finished at 19th, and I think it's great to look at it in your way. This looks back. But I think with the Freddie Kitchens takeover here, they were pretty good in that regard, right, last year?
Well, they certainly were. They were a top 5 team after Kitchens took over, and a lot of that should be credited to Kitchens. He definitely changed some of the things that they did, made some smart decisions on first and second down. But the receivers also stepped up a lot. Baker Mayfield had a ton of passes dropped, and look, we grade those passes favorably for Baker Mayfield, as we should. He made a good pass, but the result is an incomplete pass, and expected points looks at the result. So those would end up hurting the team as opposed to being a positively graded play. So that's important to keep in mind. If you're looking to project the Browns forward, I don't think 19th is the right place to look at where they'll be next year. Obviously, they added a guy in Odell Beckham Jr. who's been a top 5 wide receiver when he's been able to play, looking at both PFF grade and wins above replacement. And then Baker Mayfield, look, with Kitchens at the helm, it was him and Patrick Mahomes as far as yards per pass attempt last season. So I have very little doubt that the Browns make a major jump this next year.
It's there for them to take this year. They've made all the right moves, we think at least, going forward. So another team, though, highly talked about this year, this offseason, especially with the Dak Prescott contract coming up. The Cowboys checked in at number 22 on this list. And again, it's looking back. What do you think for them looking forward, though, knowing what we know based on the article on here at 22?
So passing stats are always weird, right? Passer rating is a particularly terrible data point because it only looks at plays where there was a pass. But passing plays can have many other results, and sacks are one of them. Dak Prescott is a guy that takes an abhorrent amount of sacks. I think Deshaun Watson was the only guy that took more sacks last year. And the interesting thing about Dak Prescott is that while a lot of sacks are usually the result of an offensive lineman blowing a protection, Dak Prescott was charged with more sacks that were on him for waiting too long in the pocket or not having good pocket awareness than any other quarterback. So as far as looking forward, I'm not nearly as bullish on Dak Prescott being paid in the top tier of quarterbacks. And I think as an offense, from a passing perspective, I would not be overly excited about them moving into the top half. Okay. Where the Cowboys can maybe make some headway is leveraging Prescott as a runner a little bit more, right? So remember, this is per pass play. Passing is probably not going to be the strength of the Dallas Cowboys. Even with the Amari Cooper trade, it's important to note that, yeah, they won games, but go back and look at who they beat. Look at the point differential. It's probably not as impressive as we should kind of think from the win-loss record.
All right. It does a great job of looking back, that you said, and then with the Cooper influx, obviously. But, you know, we had to rank our top rushing duos going in. I think we talked about adding Prescott in there with Zeke just because of that aspect. Maybe they do look to that more this year.
I really think that there's maybe nothing scarier than 3rd and short or 2nd and short when you've got a quarterback that can run, you've got a running back that can catch and run, you've got an offensive line. That was the recipe for the Cowboys a couple seasons ago in Dak's rookie year. If they can get back to that, then they can certainly be a overall very good offense.
All right. I agree with you here. But we'll circle back. We're gonna do one more team on this countdown here. Again, the full list is on PFF.com. But you talk about the money that Dak Prescott may get. So let's look at a guy that did get a lot of money last offseason, Kirk Cousins, the Minnesota Vikings, who checked in at number 23 on this list.
Yeah, this is a super interesting team, right? They went from a 13-win team with a guy named Case Keenum, who no one thought much of, to basically 500 team with a guy that's been basically 500 but put up some stats in Kirk Cousins. Cousins is very interesting. He was in the 20s in terms of rank in grade from a clean pocket, but actually played above average under pressure. And that's where I think this 23rd ranking shows up. He was under pressure nearly 40% of the time. And yards per play under pressure is basically half of what it is from a clean pocket. So if you think about that, if you're just in a suboptimal situation more than average, you're going to have suboptimal results more than average. And that's what happened with the Vikings, showing up at 23rd. Obviously, turnovers are a thing here. Sacks also a thing here, and that happens obviously when you're under pressure. So the Vikings, with that wide receiver duo, probably should be an above average offense.
A little higher.
And if they get a few things squared away with their offensive line, you know, league average pressure rate around 32, 33%, I would expect to see that improve next year. But, you know, last year it wasn't successful, and this rank bears it out.
It does make sense, and when you say how much he was actually under pressure, when you look at Cousins' pressure rate, it makes sense why they did target the offensive line and why we deem that such an important thing for them this offseason. So I think they can only go up. We did also just rate on the website the top receiving duos, and that duo in Minnesota, it was up there.
It was great.
Cousins has the best supporting cast he's probably ever going to have at this point in his career.
And we have an article on Kirk Cousins that is just hitting there too. So if you want a little more information on that, I'd check that out. Some interesting things about what they did on first looks and that kind of offense last year. I think that's a reason for optimism, the changing of the guard in Minnesota. So as with all teams, optimism is abundant.
It happens, especially this time of the offseason before training camps. So again, a little bit more on all 32 teams on PFF.com. For George, I'm Cam Mellor. We'll see you again.